Today we are doing something absolutely insane. We are putting the latest Stockfish 17.1 against its first version from 2008. It's like a modern war machine versus a caveman with a stick. This is gonna be ugly. Let's jump into the game. Alright, we have Stockfish 17.1 with white pieces and Stockfish 1 with black. Stockfish started the game with pawn to c4 English opening. Then we have pawn to e5. Both pawns are controlling their own square. White controlling b5 and d5 squares and black controlling d4 and f4 squares. Then knight to c3, knight to c6 and pawn to g3. White plays this move so that it can develop his bishop and attack on this diagonal. Black goes for knight to f6, bishop to g2 and then black develops his bishop. Knight to f3 and pawn to d6. Now both players are ready for castling. So both side castle. Here this bishop was targeting f2 squares. So that's why white goes for pawn to e3. Not only this pawn is blocking this bishop, but also supporting this 2 pawn. After any move, let's say rook to e8, pawn to d4, pawn takes, and white has control over the center. So black goes for bishop to g4, pinning the knight. Pawn to s3, kicking the bishop. Bishop goes to f5 square. Well, this bishop is targeting this square, means it will block the queen from coming here. Then we have pawn to d4. Black can't capture, so it's go for bishop to b4, knight to e2. Now in this position, if black makes any kind of mistake, let's say it's go for rook to e8, then pawn to a3, bishop here, again pawn, bishop here, and this will trap the rook. That's why black goes for pawn to e4, putting pressure on this knight. Knight to h4, attacking the bishop, bishop to d7, and then white plays pawn to a3, bishop back, pawn to b4. At this position, most of you will think that this dark square bishop is trapped. But Stockfish 1 find a best move to save this. It goes for pawn to g5, attacking the opponent's knight. This bishop is trapped. Same, this knight is also trapped. It cannot move here, bishop will take. It cannot move here, pawns will take. It cannot move here, pawn will take. Pawn takes bishop. Before capturing this knight, black captures this pawn. Then pawn to f3. Black can't take this pawn, otherwise knight will be escaped from the threat. So pawn takes knight first. Pawn takes pawn. Just look at this pawn structure, how these pieces are controlling these 6 squares. But exclude this pawn, because this pawn is attacked by knight. Pawn to a4. Pawn takes pawn. Stockfish 17 goes for queen to d3. It has many reasons. First, it is attacking the knight. Second, it will move this pawn here and attack on this pawn. Bishop to e6, queen to c2. Putting pressure on this pawn, knight to h5, defending this unprotected pawn. Pawn to d5, bishop takes pawn, bishop takes bishop, and then queen to h4, supporting this pawn and attacking this bishop. White goes for queen to g2. This knight was not protected by any piece, so black played knight to e5. Then knight to d4, knight to f6. Both pieces are targeting this pawn. White goes for rook to f4, supporting and attacking this queen. Queen to h6 and then bishop to b2, controlling this diagonal. Knight back to h5 square because it is protecting this pawn and also attacking this rook. Then rook to f1 and then black goes for rook to h1. Now if this bishop move any squares, this will be attacked to queen. So queen to g5, knight to f3, attacking the queen. Queen back to e7 and bishop f5. Double attack on this pawn. Black push this pawn, rook to h3, attacking on the pawn, rook to b8 and rook takes pawn, pawn to f6, and white goes for knight to h4 so that it can move here and attack these 2 pieces. Then we have pawn to c6, queen to d1, queen's eye on this pawn, queen to e8, supporting this pawn, bishop takes knight, pawn takes knight and rook to f1. Then we have rook to d8, attacking on this pawn and rook to g1. Now these 2 rook on same file, king to h8 and Stockfish sacrifices rook, rook to g8, rook takes and check, king takes, king move on h3 square and check, king to f8 and then knight to g6. King goes to g7 square, queen takes pawn, rook takes pawn, knight goes to e7 square and check, queen takes, king to f8, king check again, king captures knight and rook to g7 checkmate. Stockfish 17.1 is 10 points above than Stockfish 1 and is not defeated. It destroyed Stockfish 1 in 46 moves.